and welcome to another episode of the Code and Pixels podcast. My name is Kelly, and I'm once again joined by my amazing co host, Adekunle. Today, we'll be chatting with Amber Feinerman about her career journey as a UX engineer.
Cool. Thanks, Kelly. Um, Amber is a senior product designer at Netflix. Hey, Amber, thanks for being on the show. How are things going?
They're going well. Just really excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Cool. Yeah, we're excited to have you. So the first question is, can you describe your career path from your first job to where you're at right now?
Whoop. All right, I'll try to be as succinct as possible. um, I do think I'll just go back a little bit before my first job. So I was majoring in advertising. I was in my last year of getting my bachelor's degree. I interned at this little local agency that was specializing in social media marketing. Like, think when Facebook like gates were a thing and you had to like a company page in order to enter a contest or something. And so I had started out actually as an account intern, but my first week I shadowed a bunch of folks at the agency and I shadowed our web developer and something inside me just clicked. I didn't even know. I guess I just didn't even think about web development being a thing. I remember shadowing him and being like, "Oh, it's like what I used to do with my MySpace pages or my Zynga pages or my Tumblr pages." Like, I thought that was just a weird hobby that I had. I didn't know you could do that for a living. And so that's actually what kind of ignited the desire to learn how to code. And so I kind of taught myself how to code on the side with his mentorship throughout my last year of college. And then when I had graduated with my degree, he was actually moving to San Francisco. And so his positioning was open up. Um, or his position was opening up. And yeah, I got the job there, which was super cool. And so my first job was working as a front end developer at this very tiny agency, again, really focused on Facebook applications for clients like Circle K and their business partners. Like, so we did a Facebook application with like M&Ms and Mountain Dew and Call of Duty and those kinds of things just to get people to enter contests and like their Facebook page. So that was a lot of fun. And after that, I worked around Tampa Bay, which is where I'm from and where I live today. Worked at a few local ad agencies here as a front end developer, mostly working on company websites and just like kind of fun publication, digital publications. But I kind of realized that after a few years, I really kind of wanted to learn more about the product side. And I was a little bit more curious about what the long term user impact of our projects were. And I wasn't really getting that in an agency environment. So I was really excited when I got the opportunity to join IBM's design studio as a design front end developer. Really, that role is what I would describe as a design technologist today. It was very focused on prototyping, proof of concepts for UX and interaction design. And so that's really where I got my start in design technology. After that, I joined Indeed. And so when I was working at Indeed, I worked initially on like some startup projects within the company as a design technologist. But about a year in, I joined our design systems team. And that really offered something that I didn't have in my prototyping projects, which was this opportunity to think about scale and architecture. And that like really just lit me up. So I still had that design and, code intersection, but I was getting to also think about the long-term impact of those things and for our internal partners, like other designers and other engineers. So that was a lot of fun. After Indeed, I went back to IBM. I did work as a lead UX engineer for a little bit, and then I also worked on one of our cloud engineering teams as a front end engineer. So I got to work on the design side and the engineering side. After that, I joined Shopify as a marketing UX developer, a UX engineer. And I was working on landing pages for Shopify.com. So it was about almost a couple years where I really was kind of a contributor to the design system space, but not really getting a chance to work in that space. So it was great because I got to kind of be embedded at Indeed creating design systems. And then I got to immediately consume design systems and contribute. But then I realized, okay, I actually want to be back on a design systems team. And the opportunity at Sprout Social opened up where I was able to become a product design manager for our design system team seeds, as well as like build out the career bands for the design engineering practice. So that was just like a super cool opportunity. Joined that team. was there for a bit. I then joined Intuit, where actually I met Kelly. Joined there as a principal design technologist, working on our IDS team. So the core design system that kind of powers the design systems for our cornerstone brands. And then now I'm at Netflix. And Netflix, I'm working as a product designer on our Hawkins consumer design system. And this is actually the first position I've had where like coding is not part of my role. So, like, even as a product design manager, I still coded on the side, but this is like the first one where I'm not coding. So it's been really fun, but I'm still using that technical acumen on a daily basis.
Wow, what an enriching and amazing journey you've had. I'm impressed. Like I feel
Thanks.
I'm like, wow, what experience do I have? And I love that you've had such a great blend of design and engineering from being an IC, being a manager. You've kind of done it all. So you mentioned being a manager. Can you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to pursue that type of role and how it worked out and what you learned?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I had led a lot of projects and even teams as an IC prior to that position. Even, working at the small agencies, I was often the only front end developer, which meant if we had to have contractors to help with back end, I was the person managing that, or, like working with design and everything. And so, um, I had led from an IC perspective, but I was reaching a point in my career where I was less interested in maybe the execution and more interested in the strategy as well as like the people development side of things, and really wanted to kind of see if that was something that I was interested in, but also see if I can grow those skills because, even if it didn't work out, it was something I could carry with me throughout my career. And I really did love being a people manager. That was like such a fun part of my job to like watch people grow and gain that confidence and like, just reach certain milestones. Favorites was like giving out, raises or promotions. Like there's a lot of fun things about being a manager. Um, but I did realize I was kind of maybe not as done with the execution side of things as I thought I was. And so I was kind of in this point where I could continue down the leadership path, and get a little bit further away from execution or transition back to an IC. And so I kind of realized at that point, I still missed coding. I still missed the IC things. I like making things. I love that satisfaction of having that hard problem in the browser. And then you walk away and you come back and you're like, I am not good. Like, those were the things I couldn't really necessarily get as a manager because your projects are, it takes years and months sometimes for things to fully develop. And so I realized like at this point in my career, I wanted to go back to an IC role. But that's what initially got me to try out people management, and I really enjoyed it. And so it's something I'll entertain in the future for sure. But right now, still very excited to actually be able to make the things as well as like flex on that strategy side.
I know exactly what you mean, like getting your hands dirty, but then there's there are these opportunities that come up where you can have a wider impact, and so it can be hard to kind of put the gloves down and step back and see helping others and having them hit their goals. And that's really great that you've been on both sides of that. So speaking of being on both sides, you've talked about helping others grow, the different types of challenges you face in those different roles. What are some of the similarities or things that kind of helped when you were going between whether it's going into management or going back into more an IC role?
Yeah, I think for me, I actually tweeted something about this recently where it was like, I've had all these different titles, but really it comes down to problem solving. And it's just the different types of problems that you're solving. And I do think, we learn it like way back in school about the scientific method of like having hypothesis and having controlled variance and, learning from there. And so I think like there is a process to problem solving that is applicable no matter what role you're in, right? We come up with these assumptions, we come up with these hypotheses, we want to test them. What do we decide is like the measure of success or validate them? And then, once you kind of get to that stage, then you execute and then measure and, it's kind of like that product cycle, that loop. And so I think, whether it's been like again, more execution minded of like, troubleshooting things in the browser. And it's like, let's try this and let's try this. And I don't know how I got that to work, but now I'm not seeing an error. So let's go with it. To, to again, like some of those larger strategic things where you kind of have to navigate a lot more ambiguity. And again, see things that kind of will build out over time and readjust, over time. I think that's kind of been the similarity across all of these roles is just really the problem solving process and kind of knowing when to make informed decisions despite that ambiguity, knowing that um we learn through failure. And if something fails, it just means you have an opportunity to make it better. And so that's kind of a privilege that I've had throughout all of these different teams. I know not everyone maybe has the psychological safety at work to feel like safe to fail, but I do think it's kind of been an important part of my role is to kind of embrace that that could happen. And that again, it's kind of the nature of our work is very iterative and that we can improve from there. And so, yeah, that's, I think, the core similarity across either people management or IC execution, design, or engineering. We're just figuring it out as we go, especially in the design system space.
Yeah, I love that process, how you're thinking about it, like, we're kind of problem solvers, and I actually mentioned it when someone mentioned, like, was talking about, like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "I'm a professional failure because like, I just try things, and sometimes it works. Well, most of the time, it doesn't work, and when it does work, that's cool, but I think all of it's kind of like you're just learning lessons overall, so I think that's kind of a a commonality where, especially for, like, the UX engineering, um, discipline. One question I have is, like, you had all these different roles and different companies and size, whatever like that. Um, I'm wondering, like, what challenges did you encounter along the way, and can you kind of give us an example of like how you like overcame them?
Yeah, yeah. I think something that just immediately stuck out to me is I remember going from really small local ad agency where I worked at a bigger agency. So we had 30 people. And that was including the CEO and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we're kind of one of the bigger agencies here, because the first company I worked at was 8 people. Um, so I went from that environment to IBM, which has 400,000 employees worldwide, the last time I worked there. So I was like, "Oh, wow, this is a completely different way of working." And so I really had to learn how to, like, build those relationships, like, manage stakeholders in a way that I hadn't really thought about before because I was able to just, like, knock on the CEO's door and be like, "Hey, this timeline's whack," or something, where it doesn't work that way in a big product company like IBM. And so I think really learning how to articulate the things I was seeing in a way that different stakeholders could understand and really understand what are their priorities. So I think as a design technologist, UX engineer, one of our superpowers is that we can really see from like design concept to execution and we can really understand both sides of the coin so we can see potential pitfalls or opportunities that folks can't see or we can see how things can really be a larger concern down the road that maybe our product partners can't see, or again, engineering partners can't see, or design partners. It kind of goes between that trifecta. And so that was, I think, the biggest challenge for me, kind of then, and it's still something I'm actively working on now. Is like, how do you translate between all of these different stakeholders in a way that gets them excited and gets them to care? So if you're talking to product managers who are trying to adopt your design system, it's like this will increase velocity for you to ship product features faster, right? Or if you're talking to engineers, like this is something that will make your product more accessible out of the box. You don't have to think about it. Or designers, you don't have to think about interaction patterns because it's built on the engineering side. So really, it's about taking that thing where you can see all these different benefits and instead of like spewing it all out to people who will probably just be like, I have no idea what you're talking about and I don't care. It's like tailoring that message to them in a way that gets them excited. And so I think that has been one of the biggest challenges and something I'm still working on, earlier on and still today.
No, I love it. I think it kind of reminds me of having this hybrid positions. We're basically be able to like translate or kind of speak in people's languages because engineers speak a different language, designers speak a language, and you're kind of like, all right, this is the big problem. All right, how can I basically translate it so they can kind of understand? So I do love that how you're kind of like breaking down, and I think it's also a case where it's like a lot of this is like selling, which I hate selling, but I guess we all are salespeople one way or another. So definitely like how you kind of breaking that down.
And just I would love to add on one more thing to that too. It just kind of popped in my head. I think something that I've learned throughout the design system space, but I think also as a UX engineer, right, has just been the relationship building aspect. And I think you were just kind of alluding to that with the soft skills. It's like I feel very confident in my hard skills, right? I remember like back in the day when I first started contributing to the code base on this one team, I remember seeing a bunch of errors in my console and I freaked out and I thought I broke the app and everything. And then you get to a certain point in your career where you're like, tell me what's wrong. Just tell me it's on line 43. Tell me it's a semicolon. Like I'll fix it. But relationship building is way more challenging than that, right? Like you really do like it's not even, I think, just communicating messages to stakeholders, but also like building those relationships and staying in the loop of like certain decisions that are made and things like that because again we are at that intersection, and so because we are folks that can really see things in a different way, it's not, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not just about how we communicate outwards, but about building those relationships so we can kind of stay in the loop of what other folks are doing and then again make those connections where maybe folks aren't seeing them. It's something that's top of mind for me as I work in a horizontal team like as a design system, but really I think it's like, that's one of the superpowers again of UX engineers is that we really can see things that our engineering partners maybe couldn't, or like things our design partners can't in terms of technical constraints, where engineers might say, I really can't see the difference between a 4 pixel border radius and an 8 pixel border radius. Please help. You know? And so I think that just wanted to kind of call that out. Like I think it kind of goes both ways too, and just making sure that you're on top of relationship building. And that's something I'm continuously trying to improve on. Especially every time I join these new companies, I do think one of the biggest challenges of my career has been I haven't been in a lot of these companies very long, and I am often having to start new, every year and a half or so. And so I think that's something that's just it's still a challenge. It's just like how do you build those relationships to not only articulate what you're trying to do and get people excited, but also to learn about what excites them, and then how can you make those connections?
Yeah, I love that. I feel like someone compared it to like being like a politician, you have to like shake hands and kiss babies because it's like you kind of have to build that rapport before you can like basically work with folks and figure out like, all right, how are they like what do they want? What do they need and whatnot? So I love that idea. My next question is more a case of like, hey, we're UX engineers. We, basically work on two different disciplines. How do you stay motivated and continue to like grow your career over time?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think it's really figuring let me take a step back. I think the term UX engineering is so wonderful and so broad. And I think sometimes we can think that UX engineering is such a specialized niche, and it is in a way, especially at like larger product enterprise companies. But when you kind of look at it at a smaller startup company, you can really see the power of UX engineers really having this large, broad range of skill set. And really, again, like being able to hop in Figma, create components, do things, and then execute them in code, like in React or, et cetera. Um, so I think what's helpful for me and something I've been thinking about a lot lately is like what got me excited about UX engineering to begin with, and then kind of like staying like interested in that to kind of keep tabs on like what's going on in the industry. Because I think it's so easy to kind of get caught up in like the latest tools or the latest like things in product. But for me, what got me super excited about UX engineering was like interaction design and like micro interactions and just playing with CSS. Like that was my passion. That kind of really got me in particular this space. And so that's something I try to do in order to stay sharp on my skills is just like see what folks are doing with CSS and see like what's newly available. I love watching like Una Kravitz and Adam Argyle talk about all the new things that are available through CSS. Like I think they gave a talk at Config that was like the future of responsive design that I felt like, okay, this is it, right? Because it's like things that I don't think our engineering partners or design partners are thinking about, but like so much is available now in CSS that could really change the way we think about like not just screen size responsiveness, but like how do we respond to different devices? How do we respond to different contexts? How do we personalize things? And so I think it's for me, I've kind of like tried to narrow in on what are the things that get me excited about UX engineering and then kind of stay on top of that because then when I find that I'm inspired, then my mind just kind of gets excited and it's like, "Oh, and you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this." And I think, again, that's kind of like the superpower of what we do is being able to find that niche and see how it connects to all of these different things. And so, um, CodePen is something I still pull up every now and then just to, like, play with something, like, CSS-wise, or again, if I'm, curious about something, just putting something in Code Sandbox. I love tools like that, depending on, if I want like a quick, simple CSS thing, or if I want to build like an application to experiment with state. I just think like finding that thing that you're excited about and then actually just playing is so important. Just as keeping skills sharp. So again, like not necessarily having to feel like you have to code for work, but like just finding something that excites you and just, like, playing around with it and knowing, like, "Okay, like, if it doesn't work out, cool. No one's gonna look at it. Maybe they will. I don't know." Like, I'm thinking, like, my website, for example. That's, like, my little playground. But that's what keeps me kind of excited and, like, on top of my skills, especially since I'm now in a role where I'm not coding as much. I really have to kind of seek those opportunities outside of work.
I love that you talk about relationships, and you really have to build a rapport with people you're working with, people you aren't working with as well, and who are these other teams I have to interact with. And so I'm wondering, at Netflix, you work on the web platform, but with Netflix, you're supporting multiple different platforms. I would love to learn more. Like, do you have anything to share about maybe influencing or working with other platform teams? How does that work with your team?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So with the way that Netflix, I'll kind of give like a little bit of backstory just to kind of set the picture, the scene. But design systems have been at Netflix around for a while now. It really started on our studio side of things. So there's our design system supports like two main areas of the business. We have the studio side, which is really what we say from like pitch to play. We have a lot of internal applications that support Netflix productions. And so uh there's a whole design system within Hawkins, like our design system. There's a whole system called Hawkins Professional that just like powers these applications and it's only for web. Where we have Hawkins Consumer, which is the Netflix I think everyone is more familiar with, right? And the experience that you would have on your TV and how it looks on mobile and how it looks on your web browser. And so that's the team that I work on. And there's three designers on that team, myself, Matt De Silva, and then Josh Mateo. And so each one of us is kind of a platform POC. So we all work on the system holistically, but the way that our team in particular is structured is that we have a centralized or design team. So again, all of us working on these three platforms, four platforms if you want to consider Android and iOS as separate. Um, and then we have four engineering teams that are not centralized. So, they each have their own toolkits, they each have their own audiences. And so we kind of take that approach of like POCs. And so we have each one of us like go to their syncs, keep up with what's going on that platform. And then kind of that context loop where, I'll bubble things up to our design team that I find relevant. Like, okay, this is what web is working on. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to align on mobile or TV. This is something that even needs to be on TV, et cetera. And then I can also bubble context down where it's like, okay, this is what we're doing cross platform. This is how it would impact web. This is how we kind of need to think about it. And so that's the way that we've been kind of approaching our team in terms of like relationship and management, managing stakeholders on the engineering side of things. We are moving, I think, more to like a cross platform um, I would say, like, even on the engineering side, there's been a lot more appetite for engineers to kind of be more engaged on that, like, holistic cross-platform level, which has been great. So we do have, like, working groups we're setting up to kind of make sure that everyone's informed, because we've added more people to the engineering design or the engineering teams. And as you know, there's more lines of communication. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way we can kind of communicate the information in one place and everyone's kind of in the loop and we can have conversations, and it's an opportunity for engineers to learn more about the other platforms. On the design side of like the relationship stakeholder management part, you know, design, we have our XD organization and it powers all aspects of the business. We have the studio side and the consumer side, but there are certain verticals within design that are more consumer leaning, right? Like our streaming side of things, like our member experience. And then we have like our growth experience, which is our non-member experiences. And so each each team designs cross-platform, but maybe has like more of an emphasis depending on the project or the context, right? So like we have a non-member homepage. So if you go to netflix.com, that's web. It's like, there, you can't really go through the sign up flow through your TV or, your native application. It's really, we direct you to the web experience. So I work really closely with the growth team to kind of better understand the things that they need to design for our non-members. Whereas maybe we have different relationship for the streaming side who's maybe focused more on TV. And so I think it's just a matter of like really, again, going to their rituals, kind of meeting them where they are as a design system team, and then understanding what they're working on. And not only how does it play into like the components we need to build, but like actively partnering with them in the beginning of projects so that we can build components alongside them if they don't exist today. Because Hawkins Consumer is still pretty new, I would say. It's been around for a couple years, but I think we've finally reached a maturity point where we can uh, grow more with these partner teams. Like we've have a bunch of components now. I think we have about like 30, 35 components. And so we have most of what folks need. But now we're kind of like optimizing and refactoring. We want those partnerships along the way. I think often, you know, because our team has that horizontal scope, we optimize for breadth, but we need to have those relationships with our XD partners, our experience design partners, so who are focused on the depth. Like there are deep subject matter experts. Like we need to have those partnerships because we don't have a lot of context for design decisions. We just spot the patterns and codify them. But in order to like better understand those decisions and scale them, we need to have those partnerships to understand where they're coming from. And so that's kind of how we've been approaching that, is kind of like trying to meet them where they are and get involved as early as possible in their projects.
I love it. Thanks for giving me that breakdown. I feel like, especially with like different organizations and usually the process of like how design system works with other teams is slightly different. So
Yeah.
really enjoy how you kind of broke that down. Um, so let's say like there's someone that's listening. They're like, all right, I want to be just like Amber. I want to have all these amazing job titles. I want to be a design technologist, whatnot. What is the one piece of advice you could give them?
I would say stay curious and again, think about the holistic product process and kind of where this fits in. So if you want to get started in maybe the more of the prototyping side of things, then maybe start to optimize for like experimentation and like think more about like how does experimentation live in the product life cycle and how can I kind of build those skills to optimize for that. Doing quick proof of concepts, doing interaction animation design, doing prototypes in Figma. Like that's kind of stuff that I would say if you're interested in that space, you can kind of pursue that skill set and then, position yourself as like someone who's like, I am a design technologist. I optimize for innovation. If you're more interested again in like the design system side of things and you're more interested in scale and architecture, then like building your skills and experience to kind of optimize for that in a product life cycle. So again, like I think about things from an accessibility lens. And so maybe you do a little bit more accessibility research, maybe even get your WAS certification. Um, I think, or take an accessibility course through LinkedIn, et cetera. Like there's so many ways you can do that to kind of optimize for design systems, or there's, resources like Design Systems University. Um, and so I think it's just a matter of like better understanding the product life cycle and kind of where you get the most excited or fit into that, and then kind of building your skills around that. Again, my earlier in my career, I was super excited about the micro interaction, like making things animate, bringing designs to life. And I really played that to get that kind of design technologist role. But as my career started shifting, the more excited I got about design systems, my prototyping experience became less relevant. And again, I had to kind of tailor my experience and resume to, okay, I think more about the architecture of things. And here's how the decisions we make have had large scale impact. And so I think it's just a matter of like taking that experience and just learning how to craft your story. And then again, once you kind of figure out, okay, this is what I get excited about, then finding things that can help optimize you for that. And you can kind of position yourself as that person who thinks of scale or that person who thinks of innovation or both, et cetera. It just kind of depends on what gets you excited.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like, especially within our careers, we always have these seasons where we're like excited about one thing or another. And I always tell people, I was like, if you're excited about it, fully embrace it, explore it, and then you're kind of gain more like skills, and then you go into another thing. And I think that's kind of like our role, where it's like no matter what we're doing, we're just going to have these kind of different seasons and whatnot.
Totally. I mean, I feel like my career has been my career has been an example of that, right? Like there was a season I thought I'd be an engineer. There's a season I thought I'd be a product design manager. There's a season I thought I'd be a product designer, and I think we won't know unless we try. And then knowing that, like, okay, all of these experiences and skills, even if you change your mind, are not going to go to waste, right? Because it just gives you more perspective. And again, helps you better craft that story and better understand how to articulate your position in the larger context. And so I think, to your point, like embracing that we are humans with different seasons and that things might change and that's okay. Cause it's not all for naught.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it's always the fun aspect of our jobs, where it's like, hey, we change it up, we change our minds, and that's cool. Um, cool. Like, let's say, all right, next question is like, where can folks find you, and do you have anything to plug?
Don't have anything to plug, but you can find me on Twitter. I'm still not calling it X. Twitter, and I'm also on LinkedIn. And then my website is Amber is online. It's just a quick little splash page with more things to find about me. But yeah, definitely reach out to me. I would say on Twitter, say hi, or again, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, happy to chat.
Cool. Thank you again, Amber, for joining us for today's conversation. We also want to thank our listeners for tuning into this episode. For more content like previous episodes, feel free to visit our website, codingpixels.fm. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter, social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, all that. So, yeah, connect with us, and wishing everyone have a good and productive day.
Thanks, y'all.